What's up, everybody? I'm filming this video today raw and uncut, no hair tie, because that's just the kind of mood that I'm in. And because I have this humongous pimple on the side of my forehead that I'm trying to hide. Anyways, today I'm going to talk to you about squat depth. So how low should you squat? Can you squat too low? Are ass to grass squats the only way? Are wide stance parallel squats cheating? To me, talking about squat depth is like talking about religion. Everyone's looking at the same thing, but we're all trying to convince others that our way is the only way. Good afternoon, sir. I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about your squat depth.
No, thank you.
Ass to grass, sir. Some say ass to grass is the only way. Some say that ass to grass squats are unnecessary and actually limiting your potential. Let's take a closer look at the pros and cons of two styles of squats. Number one, ass to grass squats. And number two, a wider stance squat just below 90 degrees that for this video I will call powerlifting squats. Number one, ass to grass squats involve more range of motion than a powerlifting squat. This increased range of motion usually results in more muscle soreness. Muscle soreness is usually a precursor to muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth. For most people, this is good. Number two, it allows you to bounce out of the bottom position of the squat. Personally, I take full advantage of this bounce. I will say that it takes perfect timing, balance and coordination, and lots of practice. Trying to use this bounce is not something a beginner should do, but over time, you can use this bounce to your advantage. And number three, in my opinion, nothing improves athleticism, balance and coordination, flexibility, and mental toughness quite like an ass to grass squat. Now let's take a look at some of the cons of ass to grass squats. Number one, you're probably going to have to lighten the load a bit if you want to squat ass to grass. There is a reason why world record squats are not performed ass to grass. Which brings me to number two. Most of the time, you will lose tightness if you completely dive bomb your squat, mainly in the hamstrings. When you perform a low bar squat and you start by sitting your hips back, you are loading your hamstrings. At some point, you can sit down too low and force your knees forward. This takes the load off your hamstrings and places it on your quads. You might be a quad dominant lifter and you can actually use this to your advantage, but that's another story. So, number two, you lose tightness when you dive bomb a squat. And number three, yeah, I can't think of another reason ass to grass squats are bad. Now, let's talk about powerlifting squats. In a powerlifting squat, the crease of your hips has to go below the top of your kneecap. And that's it. So, this might allow you to squat more weight than an ass to grass squat because the range of motion is slightly reduced. Number two, it's easier to maintain tightness throughout a powerlifting squat than it is an ass to grass squat. Now, let's look at some cons of a powerlifting style squat. Number one, you can't use the bounce at the bottom of the squat. Maybe a stretch reflex, but not a bounce. Number two, it might not transfer well to your sport, i.e. weightlifter, crossfitter, rugby player, etc. More on this later. And number three, it can be very difficult to judge whether or not you're going deep enough. With an ass to grass squat, there's no doubt in your mind that you hit depth because your hamstring touched your heels. So, what style of squat should you do? That all depends on your goals, your ability, and your sport. If you are an Olympic weightlifter, you have no business performing a powerlifting style squat. You had better practice fast, ass to grass squats because that's the position that you will be catching the barbell in the bottom of a clean and the snatch. If you're a football player, wrestler, rugby player, I would suggest performing deep ass to grass squats in the weight room. There is a lot of unpredictable movement in these sports, and if you're only training this short range of motion, you're going to get injured when you're thrown into a position that demands full range of motion. If you're a competitive powerlifter, you should probably stick with a powerlifting style of squat because that's all that's needed. Like I said earlier, a powerlifting style squat will usually allow you to squat more weight. The goal of a powerlifting meet is to move maximum weight. Squatting ass to grass in a powerlifting meet is unnecessary. You don't get extra points for depth. It's black and white. You either hit depth or you didn't. Personally, I squat ass to grass in powerlifting meets because that's the style of squat that I prefer. I don't do it to show off or to prove a point. I can lift more weight with an ass to grass squat than I can with a powerlifting style squat. But that's not the case for most. The truth is, most of you watching this video are not competitive powerlifters. If you're just an average Joe who enjoys lifting for health and fitness purposes, I would suggest you strive for ass to grass squats. If you're not there yet, just keep working at it. Squatting deep is a natural range of motion that we all should have the ability to perform. When you squat deep, you can actually perform twice the work with half the weight. It makes no sense to me while some people would rather squat 350 pounds halfway down when they could squat 150 pounds all the way down and actually get a better workout from it. I know I might seem a little biased towards ass to grass squats, but I'm allowed to be. I love deep squats because they're challenging. And that's the whole goal of training. Challenging yourself mentally and physically to get better, not to show off. I firmly believe that regularly doing ass to grass squats has really helped me do well in some of the strongman competitions that I compete in. Some strongman events demand very awkward positions, and I have beat other guys who were probably stronger than me, but moved like shit. So anyways, let's wrap this up. In conclusion, just because I love ass to grass squats does not mean that it's the one and only way to squat. If I saw Phil Heath quarter squatting with a narrow stance, I would not correct him because what he's doing is apparently working for him. I would never tell Klokov not to squat so low, and I would never tell Dave Hoff to narrow his stance and go a little deeper. Different squat depths for different people. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something, and always remember,
Train on time.